Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Ed Carbajal. Ed, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. Hanging in there. I'm a little messed up over at Val Kilmer's passing, but I literally grew up watching that guy. Grew up, got old watching that guy. So, yeah. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, great actor, great movies. Obviously, will live forever. But yeah, so we got another week. We don't have a pay-per-view week again, so a little bit slower than what we'd like to be for big MMA news. Obviously, without although PFL does start tomorrow. I guess we should mention that off the top of our heads because that they're Thursday. Why not just fire it up on a Thursday night in the middle in the middle
World
of the
tournament on ESPN 2. I think the main card at 10 p.m. because nobody has to work Friday morning, right? And the World Tournament starts. It'll be tomorrow, and then not next. So that's Thursday, then Friday, then another Friday, if I'm remembering correctly. The dates are, if you guys subscribe to my newsletter, I did put the post up there, and I reposted it, or it'll be in this week's newsletter as a reminder, since it's kicking off on a Thursday night.
All right, so we do have that to watch tomorrow. Also, going to throw something out we forgot to mention last week, just popped into my head again. Luis Palomino picked up a Thursday night BKFC, picked up the what was it? The King of the Streets title is what I believe they called it for him. But he moves to an incredible record, keeps winning over there. He's pretty much the BKFC GOAT statistically with his wins now. And I know we've talked about him in the past, especially his wars with Gagey, but this BK stuff comes around and you hope people, get a little extra money about it. It's great to see guys that were grinders in MMA put on some great wars that are now just reaping the rewards of being violent fighters. Maybe not the best fighters on the planet, but just violent fighters who are willing to entertain and leave it on the line. And I mean, nothing makes me happier than seeing that guy win after win.
And I remember his two fights with Justin Gaethje in the World Series of Fighting. But I mean, if you want to talk about great MMA fights, and like when you talk about like Chandler Alvarez and Bellator, that's kind of like if I were to pick that type of fight from the World Series of Fighting days, it's the Palomino Gaethje fights.
Yeah, I mean, those are the best fights from those days, and fights that while Gaethje won, they were fights where if it wasn't Justin Gaethje, Palomino would have overwhelmed the average opponent, and history could have very well been changed, and it could have been Palomino, the guy we're watching, boxing it up with Holloway and those guys. So I mean, it's amazing how little things can change, but for him to fall into his niche right now and really be killing it, and just good attitude. Seems like the fans, especially in Florida, really attached to the guy. He seems to be a part of that community, so it's really great what's going on with him. So just wanted to throw that out because again, old school legends that are really that are making it happen later in their career through that is what makes me happy to support and watch that. So
well, sometimes it's just the right, like they need the right it's just the right recipe of whatever they're good at, like we talk about Mike Perry so much, and how when he didn't become, he was kind of like a meme when he was in the UFC, and now that when he got into BKFC, now he's like an icon. So some guys just need the right platform to be on.
And some guys are fighters and some guys are mixed martial artists. I mean, not to take away from their martial arts backgrounds, but we watched it evolve in front of our eyes. We saw guys like Igor Vovchanchyn and guys that were just absolute killers, and the sport caught up to them, and then wrestling, and it became, you couldn't just stand there and bang, you know what I mean? And we saw it overwhelm a lot of our guys. And bottom line is just not everybody can be George St. Pierre. You know what I mean? So you're going to have guys that have weaknesses, and unfortunately, some of their weaknesses are exposed in the UFC. They get to this, and they can really thrive at what they're super skilled at. So I mean, that's it's great. So just wanted to throw that out there. But on the heels of that, somebody who left the UFC coming back. I mean, we saw the news of Kyoji Horiguchi this week re-signing with the UFC on the tails of Asakura signing with them last year and fighting for the title against Pantoja.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, if there's any podcast out there that has been pro Horiguchi since the day that he stepped into the Rising Ring, it's been us. And he lived up to it. He did everything that we've always said, and how you should do it.
Yeah.
If he went back to Japan, and he established himself again as arguably the best fighter in his weight division, and it forced the UFC to have to come back. I imagine he probably got a massive pay raise from what he was previously making under their organization, and now he's probably. I mean, like I don't know about you, we just had Asakura fight Pantoja because they were a little confused on what to do. Now, we'll get to Brandon Moreno's last fight this past weekend. I just do Horiguchi Pantoja right out the gate. To me, I'm throwing that out there. I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
Moreno just fought, and he can get the winner of that fight. But to me, like I'm lining that fight up 3 months down the line right now if I can pull it off, even quicker.
I mean, I do agree with. I mean, that's what I kind of see happening. But with Moreno picking up the win in Mexico and what they plan on doing in September, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of do Moreno, like say do Moreno Horiguchi, and the winner of that Moreno Horiguchi in September for the Noche UFC in Guadalajara, because they announced that last weekend. So it'd be like Mexico versus Japan type of thing, and then the winner of that fights Pantoja. I don't know if keeping Pantoja on the shelf that long is smart. So it depends on what they want to do with Horiguchi. Either way, they have if I forget if Horiguchi preferred 125 or 135. I remember he used to kind of say something to Coker back when they were doing the co-promotion thing, and he was on the Bellator side. So I might be getting my signals crossed, but either way, a lot of fights to make.
Yeah, I mean, my argument would be okay. So if for me, I'm giving him the Pantoja shot right off the bat. Here's my reason why: if Moreno beats Horiguchi, and then Moreno loses again to Pantoja, you've just Moreno can essentially never fight for that title again against Pantoja. Yeah. He'll be 0-3, and you've already given a loss to Horiguchi. If you let Horiguchi fight Pantoja, and let's say Horiguchi wins, then Moreno steps in. A Pantoja rematch is available. You also have, and then if Moreno, if Pantoja beats Horiguchi, then you have Moreno. By then, you've already started to build back Horiguchi again. You get a fight lined up for him, start working back. So that would be my only thing. Is to me, it opens up more fights if Moreno, because if Moreno gets another title shot, he's got to win. And if he wins, it's probably an instant rematch with Pantoja. Because at that point, we're going to the quad fight, and
that's true. Yeah.
So
you can only sell that fight so many times. Yeah.
And I don't want to see
unless it's like because him and Davison Figueiredo, I watched 10 of those, because those were all fun.
No, I'm not saying these aren't great fights, and I wouldn't want. I don't want to see what we saw in the past. I don't want Horiguchi to come in, fight somebody, have kind of a dud fight, might even win a dud fight, and then all of a sudden he loses that momentum. You get some fans start to go, "Oh, you can't hang." Right now, you just hit it while it's hot. You go, "This is the king of Japan again." It's awesome, and you have the storyline, man. He's trying to he wants to get back at Asakura, so he gets the belt by beating the guy that Asakura couldn't beat, and then maybe Asakura and Horiguchi fight again down the line, and I mean, there's a bunch of stuff there. So that's kind of how I work that. But I mean, I'm elated to see him sign there. It's cool that Rizin is working with they seem to be working together. I mean, Saki Kabara is basically writing these contracts. So it's not like this is stuff behind the back. This is all up front. I think Rizin admitting kind of, hey, we're not the UFC, so our guys can go there. We can still put on shows here with people that electrify our crowd out here. And when they become super famous out here, if they want to move to the States and go compete in the UFC, then they can do that. I also always will dream that this opens up some kind of UFC in Japan where we actually get theatrics,
something,
event with theatrics,
or at least like the Rizin theatrics with if the UFC wants to take control, but let them just use their platform.
Exactly. Just let the UFC use it.
You're trying to do different things by doing stuff in the sphere, or whatever. Do that. I mean, people, you've got enough fans that have new fans that have a Fight Pass account and watch all the Pride events and are like, holy cow, that's pretty cool. That maybe they wouldn't mind seeing that. And the other thing too is just to talk about how this has happened and the Asakura thing happened. I mean, I think it was the end of last year, the beginning of this year, where Dana White said when he and Sakakibara finally said there's that picture out there that's with them together when they finally sat down and talked after all these years and talked about how back in how it was in the early 2000s when Pride was on top and UFC was kind of fighting their way up, and they both kind of agreed that was probably the most fun time for both organizations, which UFC was fun back then too. So a lot more fun than it is now. I know I probably get a lot of hate for saying that, but it's a little oversaturated. There's somebody put up a meme today with Dan Severn and John Jones, and they were like, oh, fought twice in the last 3 years, and this guy fought 3 times in one night. Like who's your fight? And I was just like, I that spoke to me. I feel that. So yeah, I think doing that is something collaboration with them too, whatever they're doing, whatever they talk to, whatever they have planned. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for fight fans. And Asakura, I loved the way he handled the media week. That when he made his, I know he didn't win, but I mean he was playing all the right games. So and Horiguchi's fun. He's just got good energy. So.
Yeah, and then again, as we've said in the past, obviously not UFC champions, but I don't know why some lower level UFC fighters couldn't go to Japan and compete in some cross promotion stuff there, or even just let them sign 1, 2, 3 fight contracts. Have 3 fights in Japan and then come back to the UFC. If everything's open, and we're having this, why not? Why not? I get the champions. I get the UFC protecting their champions. Makes all the sense in the world in 2025. But guys that are on the way out or guys that are just trying to make a name for themselves, I don't understand why we can't get, especially guys that are complaining about not getting fights. That's just an idea, but great signing. Look forward to see what they do with him. And that pretty much brings us to Brandon Moreno from this past weekend. I don't know. What was your opinion, I guess, of the whole event in general?
I loved it. Even though they lost fights day of, I was just like, it was, and I'm glad they made the announcement for the next Noche UFC during that, because it was kind of like them admitting, okay, yeah, we did this fear, but we fumbled a little bit when we were trying to love letter to the Mexican people, and then you headline with O'Malley and shout out to Danny Segura from MMA Junkie for putting that question out there to Moreno, because he even said he pointed that out, and Moreno was saying how he definitely, if they're going to do it in Guadalajara, they're going to make it properly. So if they're in Guadalajara, then you should have no shortage of Mexican fighters, and you absolutely have to headline that card with Moreno and somebody. I don't know if he wants us to sit back for that long. That's September, so there's time. I mean, but it was definitely not the UFC London event from the week before, which I know everybody was hating on. This was it was fun. Every fight I enjoyed all the fights I watched. I actually kept it. It's Moreno, so I still have it recorded because if there's nothing on when I'm going to sleep, I'm replaying some of the fights, because there was so many fights on there that I was just impressed with. Is it Borges? And there's just so many fights that I was impressed with the way that they went. Some fighters that I was very happy with the event. I think we needed it. It was definitely good that it was on ESPN too. That's not something you want having trouble to watch on ESPN Plus. So, hopefully whenever their broadcast rights deal is over and they do more stuff in Mexico, they keep that energy. I loved it. I thought everything was great.
I just answered my own question by looking at something. So you had mentioned that the next the next Noche event, excuse me, was going to be in Guadalajara, which they announced. It's a numbered event, That was going to be my main concern. Because remember, the first one wasn't a numbered event. The first one was a fight night where we got Shevchenko and Grasso. But it was a not well selling card, and that was like the fight, right? Like, so I'm just glad that it's a pay-per-view and that they're not just grifting off of that.
Yeah,
they're not going to give the fans in Mexico or Guadalajara some just BS fight night card that is just a bunch of Mexicans just to give them a bunch of Mexican fighters. You know, now you're looking at least one title fight, and you're looking at a legit main card where now we can kind of get creative and try to figure out, obviously you got to have the Mexican fighters for the event, but also if I'm living in Guadalajara and they want to give me like John Jones versus Aspinall, like I'm losing my mind. And I know they're not going to do that fight down there, but why not? Why not give, like, I get it. Ideally it's a Mexican fight, but even if like Moreno's the co-headliner, right? Like, I still think if you give those fans down there a fight, now a love story to the Mexican people, I get it. It wouldn't make sense. We just had O'Malley, Dashvili, but if I'm living down there, it's a pay-per-view. How many times are you getting that? We've had what, you know what I mean? Like, I'm saying, bring it all to me. If I'm a Mexican fight fan down there, I'm not, at least and my perspective is different because I'm not Mexican. So I don't have the cultural attachment, I guess, that Mexican fight fans have with the Mexican fighters, historically through boxing and everything else. But yeah. I'm going to just bring it. This is a pay-per-view. Let's load this thing up. And let's, a love letter to the Mexican fans, to me, would be giving them a 5-star pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And not just sugarcoating and going, hey, here's Moreno and here's Grasso again.
And here's some movies about the history of Mexico. Yeah.
So that looks good. That's in September. That'll obviously, we'll see how that takes the UFC. I guess we had the Sphere last September, so it doesn't really throw their schedule off. They have fights. They might have 2 pay-per-views that damn day for all we know.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of something, I'm surprised. Oh, go ahead.
Were you going to go into the GFL?
I was going to go into the GFL because I'm surprisingly happy
let me bring
with the fight cards, and I'm probably gonna go, right? Like, this is in my neighborhood, like in my backyard essentially, and there's a million fights. I can't really say the last time I remember knowing somebody in basically every single fight for 32 fights that's being put on a fight card.
It looks fun.
It early.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and they're gonna have Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis on the. It's it's definitely the MMA fans, the OG MMA fans. Can't complain about the matchups. I mean, maybe there's concerns about them because of the age and or whatever, some of these guys, but you can't. We all have a little just bleed in us, and there's fights there that we want to see, and that's one thing I wanted to. I knew we were going to talk about it when they put out the press release. But my thing is, this venue, the Shrine Auditorium. Have you been there? What's it like? Like,
I have not. It's real small. I know Invicta held a Cyborg fight there years ago that I didn't go to, and I believe Combate may have had an LA show outside of the Shrine Auditorium, like on their grass area or something outside. So I haven't been there. It looks like it's a small little theater. We have a handful of those things around here, so I kind of know what to expect with it. I imagine it'll be like, stage, cage on the stage, basically, Madison Theater, same kind of setup as how generally they're all going to be. Probably not that size though. I'm guessing it's a little smaller than that.
I mean, the fights that they have on at least that they're advertising, we'll say, because come May we'll see how these cards hold up.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the stuff that the GFL says versus what fighters know what's happening. But I can't not hate on a lot of these matchups. I mean, the Ray Borg Marlon Moraes is obviously something that made me raise my eyebrows because I'm a big Marlon Moraes fan. That's like a classical matchup. I'm trying to think of what else jumped out at me. Neiman Gracie, the fact that he's with them lets me know that the PFL didn't bother to hold on to him. There's just so many. The Barao, Faber. I mean, he's probably going to pack the house because it's out in your area. Sage Northcutt and Lucas Martins. That was one that I was kind of like, okay. I had forgotten that they said they had Sage, but and Alejandro Lara, Aspen Ladd. That's a great fight. That's a great
that's a fun one. I never thought I'd say this, but Holly Holm, Julia Budd kind of intrigues me a little bit, just because it's two fighters that we would have never really thought. I never. One was Bellator, the other one was UFC. It's and I guess that's not going to be the exciting fight, but the names on it intrigue me slightly. And then on the other card, obviously on the first one, Henderson Pettis, I don't think they could have a boring fight if they fought 1,000 times. About the only name on that first card that kind of concerns me is Barao. If he gets taken down and beaten up by Faber, he's the one that I don't really want to see get pounded into oblivion. The second night, Paige Van Zant's returning to MMA. It's been a while.
Wet butts. This fight up here with Ferguson and Dylan Dennis is the one. Like I have no doubt that Tony Ferguson will show up. Dylan Dennis is the one I'm concerned with, because Mike Perry was doing an interview with somebody talking about that they're talking about him and Dylan Dennis doing an MMA fight this month, and I'm like, okay, well if that happens this month, how is he going to fight Tony Ferguson? So I mean, I think Dylan Dennis, that I would feel bad for Tony if he's getting ready for a fight, because we know, regardless of the losses he's picked up, we know he's getting ready. And,
but isn't that the whole purpose of the team thing? Shouldn't there be somebody a backup ready to go?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I would assume that if there's a
Darren
team
Owen
and there's
would
no
have
backup,
that.
then that kind of drops the ball. Obviously Ferguson's not someone I necessarily need to see fight again. Verdum versus TBA kind of has me concerned, a little bit. I look forward to Lima Hall. I think that's a fun fight. Lima like to see her get back into some action.
Yeah.
Lorenz Larkin, I mean, never has a bad
fun
fight
right here. Ronnie Marks and Du-Won Jung. Ronnie Marks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For heavyweights, you got Gustafson and St. Preux. Yes, I get it. They're long in the tooth, but I mean, I don't know. I'm curious to see what they're going to charge for this event. I'm sure they'll overcharge the pay-per-view. I'm curious what they're going to try to charge for tickets. But like I said, in a world where there's not a lot of fights right now other than UFC, if this is what's going to happen, and this is the match, these are the kind of things that I want to, matchups I want to see. There's not really, I don't see any like massive mismatches. It's all kind of even it's old. I mean, they don't have Faber's not fighting a 25-year-old. Like it's kind of evenly matched, and Dennis Ferguson, if it does happen, is definitely going to be kind of a shit show that's worth watching. That's for sure. I mean, I don't even know what everything with Dylan Dennis is pretty much that, but I again, freak shows.
I'd like Tony Ferguson to. I think if they do fight, I think he can win this one, as long as he doesn't let Dylan Dennis play any leg locky nonsense with him. Just keep your hips away from him. And as a 10th Planet trained grappler, I think he's probably pretty good at that. So I'm interested. I'm more concerned of the fight, falling out than anything.
I'm sure. And then Alan Belcher coming back to MMA after being a BKFC heavyweight champ. I'm sure a lot of these are going to fall out, but there's a lot of depth here too. And if there's teams, then I expect to see some other fill-ins that are readily available.
It's pretty cool to have a double header like Saturday, Sunday. I mean, if they can do that and pull it off and people watch it. So the thing that was missing from the press release was broadcast, details, and the exact date of when the tickets go on sale. What does it say here?
It says in April.
April, yeah. So we're at today's April 2nd. So,
and as of last week, the event wasn't listed on the Shrine Auditorium website yet.
Yeah, and I know a couple of people looked into that, but I think Helwani's one of their shills, and he said that he spoke to Andy Foster, and Andy Foster said it's good to go. Danny, I know Danny and our friends over at the Last Round podcast speak to Andy Foster a lot, so I could probably holler at him to see if he can get that verified for us, because it's a more trusted source than somebody that's a paid shill. So
yeah,
but I mean, we went when the GFL made their thing. I mean, we've already said, look, we need them. We need somebody. We need somebody to come on and fill the void that Bellator has left, because PFL. I mean, how many of you listening right now know that their first thing starts tomorrow night? Like, seriously, if you listen, on Spotify, you can leave comments. Do it on the YouTube channel. Whenever you watch this, you're probably going to watch this when it's on tomorrow night. Like, how many of you know, if I didn't say it right now, knew that it was on? And with all the stuff with all Don Davis's ad, he pays the ad fee for his tweets to like, I just.
Yeah. But again, PFL, there was something that I saw today, so we have somebody to root for now. Former guest, one of our old school guests, Justin Wetzel, has signed with PFL. He's part of the tournament now. So best of luck to him. Again, one of our early guests, probably in the, years ago now. But yeah, so that's cool to see. It's nice that you got Jeffrey and Wetzel now to to support guys who help support us in the early days of the show, especially. Yeah. So cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. A little bit shorter show, but next week we got the big pay-per-view to look forward to. So
yeah. Really? Before we even, because I want to make sure I mention it, talking about supporters of the show, folks that I've talked to, over at Spectation Sports, one of our the man that had the hardest tryout to get into the UFC, Therese Finney, makes his UFC debut this weekend on Saturday's UFC card. So if you needed a reason to watch, head over to Spectation Sports. You can watch a lot of his highlights there. The interviews that myself and James Lynch have done with him there. I think Lynch might have gotten a more recent one about this fight coming up. So check that out. But he's making his middleweight debut this weekend. He's 5'8", fights at 185, and I feel like that's why they made it so hard for him. But the dude is a knockout machine. He's 10-0. Hopefully he moves to 11-0 on Saturday.
Nice. Fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me at Fight Fan Hawk on Twitter, MMA Hawk 21 on Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good night and enjoy the fights.